everybody, my name is Dallas. Welcome back to the Fantasy Football Outpost. This is our third podcast episode so far, and before we get into today's topic, as always, we're going to go ahead and get straight into the news. Antonio Brown is out with an extreme case of frostbite on his feet from cryotherapy. The amount of time that he will be out as of right now still remains unknown, but only time will tell. Something to keep your guys' eyes on. He's already moved down boards quite a bit. And for those of you drafting right now, he may move down a little bit more. My guess is it's something that's going to fix itself before the season starts, and you're really not going to have to worry about it. Those of you that watched Hard Knocks could see that he was still having a little bit of trouble being able to plant and kind of explode off of his steps. So that being said, it's Antonio Brown. He's going to do what he can to get back out there. And so we're just going to have to see how this one plays out. An Ezekiel Elliott update, not a whole lot has changed except for the fact that it did come out this week that Ezekiel Elliott reportedly will not play for the Cowboys in 2019 without a new deal. So he is prepared to sit out the entire season. That being said, it won't go towards his chances of becoming a free agent because he is still under contract and he will not accrue another season towards that if he does decide to sit out the entire year. Jerry Jones feels confident that he will get the deal done with him, Dak, and Amari. Elliott's agent, when asked about the situation, stated that it is possible for Elliott to miss part of the regular season, but that they do not think nor want that to happen. So this is something for us to keep an eye out. Sounds like both sides want to get a deal done. It just really depends on who's going to blink first and give in a little bit either way. I think both sides probably need to be able to find common ground. But Jerry Jones is stubborn, and it sounds like Ezekiel Elliott knows his value and he's got his feet set. So let's see how that works out. Hopefully they get that deal done soon. Damian Williams has returned to practice after tweaking his hamstring and sitting out pretty much all week. He is back now out there with the first team running all the reps with them. It is said that the preseason games are a competition for the number 2 spot. So it sounds like just by making that comment that Damian Williams is your solidified number 1 guy, which we all kind of assumed, but there were still a few people out there that thought Carlos Hyde still had a shot at taking that. But Carlos Hyde is kind of just there to compete with the other guys just in case something happens to Damian Williams, but looks like he is fine. He is back out there, and let's hope everything stays good and he wasn't rushed and everything's fully healthy. And if that's the case, green light go on him again. He is still in my top 10 as of right now because I'm going to assume that he is fully healthy. But if this hamstring comes back in any way, shape, or form, whether it be soreness or swelling in other areas that just cause him to miss some more time, I'm probably going to be out on him, or at least as early as I had him. I was willing to reach on him. Now I'll probably wait and hope he falls, and if he doesn't, then I'm okay with missing out on it if he continues to show injuries. But that being said, if he's perfectly fine and that was just kind of a one-time deal and he's good to go, I am full-on ready to draft Damian Williams in any league that I'm in, depending on where at, and I think you guys should do the same. But we'll just have to see how this plays out. But as of right now, everything seems like it's okay. Devin Singletary, the Buffalo Bills rookie running back that they drafted, is apparently seeing a lot of first-team reps, and he's impressing all the coaches with not only his big playability, but his open field shiftiness. And he's also starting to get worked into the passing game, so these are all good signs for Devin Singletary. LaShawn McCoy was told that he's still the guy, but this is not looking good for him, and so we'll have to see. I personally don't want to even remotely touch LaShawn McCoy in any of my drafts, but I am all for Devin Singletary, especially for a second-half season breakout like Nick Chubb was last year. I look for Devin Singletary to be that this year. There's a few other guys, but he's definitely the front runner in that particular conversation for me. Jerick McKinnon has been activated from the PUP list, but he is taking it slow, performing some side work, but he is now able to participate in team walkthroughs, so we'll see how this affects things. It's definitely a backfield you want to watch in the preseason. I personally think that Jerick McKinnon isn't going to be a factor this year just because of that injury, unfortunately, but who knows? None of us do, but I think Tevin Coleman is still probably your guy, with Matt Breida apparently is being used everywhere, so they both could potentially have value with Breida taking over towards the end of the year, or Coleman just could break out and lock down that spot. This is a backfield that the only one I'm really taking a shot at is Breida at the end of drafts, just because it's such a fuzzy question mark of a backfield, and it's one I don't like taking that much of a risk, especially as early as like the 6th, 7th round that you're having to take Coleman, if not earlier than that. I'm just not on that ship. I will wait for Breida at the end of the draft because he's even going undrafted in some. I'm sure as time gets closer that won't be the case. But I'd take him at the better value than that shot at Tevin Coleman works out. Maybe Tevin Coleman sucks for a few weeks and you can trade for him for a lot less than what that draft value was and hold on to him and see if he ends up doing good. But I personally am not touching any of these running backs unless it's Matt Breida late. I have no interest in Jerick McKinnon, but only time will tell if this ends up actually paying out and being even better, so we'll see. Texans cut D'Onta Foreman, and he was immediately picked up by the Colts. This has been the most hyped, I won't say the most hyped news that I've heard, but I've heard so many people talk about this, and I personally think it is irrelevant. I think the only person that this hurts is Spencer Ware. I think Spencer Ware, being that he's injured and going to miss a little while, if D'Onta Foreman's healthy, then I think that's all you're going to have to deal with there with this affecting anything. I don't see this affecting Marlon Mack at all. I really don't see it affecting Nyheim Hines either. I think D'Onta Foreman is in one of those situations where if he comes and proves himself in preseason, maybe the hype will start to grow a little bit. And I'll back off that this is pointless news a little bit. But until I see something out of him, I'm not expecting anything from him. So honestly, if we get anything, it's just a bonus to me because I hear so many people excited or hyped or worried that this is going to affect Marlon Mack, and I'm still fully confident drafting Marlon Mack where I have been, and am not moving him down at all because of this. Miles Sanders is reportedly, quote, easily the most impressive runner on the Eagles' backfield right now. At the same time, Jordan Howard is looking to, quote, re-establish himself in this backfield. These are all conflicting reports and quite honestly aren't helping anything when it comes to that decision, and I still view Miles Sanders as the only actual option to draft on this team. I don't even like Darren Sproles, and I would only take Miles Sanders if he starts to slip in drafts. If he's still going high, I'm not interested. Again, just like the Tevin Coleman deal, if he starts off the year pretty slow, like I think he will, he may end up coming around and doing better. But if he starts off the year pretty slow and Jordan Howard looks like he's doing decent, but you think he may have an opportunity to work his way up, maybe try trading for Miles Sanders at some point. But other than that, I don't plan on drafting anybody in this backfield, and quite honestly, I can't advise anyone else to either unless you just want to take that shot. Your team's loaded, you're playing like an 8-man league, and this is like round 13, and you don't even care at this point. And by all means, go for it. But at the ADPs that they're currently sitting at, it is just not worth it for me. And people continue to be hyped on this, and I don't see a reason why. Not yet, anyway. I think Miles Sanders could potentially be great. I'm not questioning his ability. I'm questioning his opportunity right now because it looks like Jordan Howard is potential thorn situation here this year. And like I said, if you guys have been watching me, you know what the thorn is. We'll get into it a little bit later at the end of the episode as well. But as of right now, this is going to be a backfield that I just have no interest in at all. I actually think this is a worse situation than the 49ers have, and that's something that not a whole lot of people have been talking about. Everybody likes to hold the 49ers as the most complicated backfield that no one wants to draft out of. I think the Eagles are the most complicated one. I would rather take my shot at Matt Breida than I would even taking my shot at Miles Sanders. It's just they're still too high of ADPs to go for this. He's actually a higher ADP than Jordan Howard, who may end up being the guy. I mean, he's been great since he's been in the NFL. It's just he's constantly not quite there, and so his production's good, but you're not happy with how it ended up going for you. And so I think that has a lot to do with his value and sitting where it's at. Who knows, he may blossom in Philly and then Miles Sanders gets buried into nothing. So only time will tell. I still think Miles Sanders is going to end up being the guy in this backfield, but with the ADPs that he's sitting at, I have no interest in it. So that is going to wrap it up for news. Like I said, I changed it. These are no longer recorded on Tuesday nights and uploaded on Wednesdays. Because of my work schedule, it is 10 times easier for me to record these on Wednesday nights and upload them Thursday mornings. That way they still come out before the Thursday night game once the season starts. So that is how things will go. So this news that we just went over is as of Wednesday night. And if anything changes or updates by the time this is uploaded, I'm sorry I missed it. If it's a big enough deal, we will get it in next week's episode. But that is going to be it for the news segment. Let's go ahead and move on over to the topic of this podcast episode. So today's topic is the top 15 quarterbacks. And you might be wondering, well, you did top 10 running backs and you did top 10 wide receivers. Why aren't you doing top 10 quarterbacks? And that's because after the 7-8 mark, everything becomes a blur and they kind of blend for me because there's not that big of a difference. And you're splitting hairs with guys. There's even guys that I left out that could very easily work their way in all the way to the top 10 because, like I said, after that 7-8 spot, everybody kind of blends together. For me personally, anyway. Some people might have a better lock on this, but I like my early ones. It's once it gets to that point that things get a little fuzzy, but I'm pretty confident in the way that I ended up breaking things down. But this is going to be an interesting episode because I'll put it this way. We're about to go over sleepers, ADPs based on the drafts on Sleeper, and like I said, they have the most accurate ADPs in my opinion. I only have one that lines up with them pick for pick, and that's number 1. And you can all guess who that is. After that, none of mine line up with theirs at all. It may be 1 off, 2 off, completely off. And so it's going to be pretty interesting. I think you guys are actually going to be pretty interested to see how things play out today. So let's go ahead and go over sleepers, top 15 quarterbacks based on ADPs from your all's drafts. Right off the bat, number 1, we have Patrick Mahomes, as expected. Number 2, we have Andrew Luck. Number 3, we have Aaron Rodgers. Number 4, Deshaun Watson. Number 5, Baker Mayfield. Number 6, Matt Ryan. Number 7, Drew Brees. Number 8, Carson Wentz. Number 9, Kyler Murray. Number 10, Russell Wilson. Number 11, Cam Newton. Number 12, Jared Goff. Number 13, Jameis Winston. Number 14, Phillip Rivers. And number 15, Ben Roethlisberger. So that is the top 15 according to Sleeper's ADPs. Now let's go ahead and get into my top 15 quarterbacks for the 2019 fantasy football season. Number 1, like I said, is obvious. It's the only one that matched Sleepers, is Patrick Mahomes. So as with all of these top 10, top 15, different positions, different players, I always write a positive, but I always make sure I try to write a negative in there too because I don't want it to sound like I'm over the top on an individual player. I want to give you a reason to back off of them as well and make your own decision on it. So the positives for Patrick Mahomes is, what hasn't been said? This is the best offense in the NFL, and Andy Reid's offense is always air it out, and so you know Patrick Mahomes is going to come out there and get numbers. And Tyreek Hill is not suspended, so you best believe you're going to see him speeding right past people, and that cannon's going to launch it all the way over everybody, and he's going to break away for 60, 70-yard touchdowns all year again. That being said, I think people are going to be expecting it a little bit more now, which only means I think Travis Kelce might have an even better year this year. Believe it or not, it's crazy to even try and assume that or expect that, but we'll see. It's really speculation at this point. I think people are going to try to knock down Tyreek Hill a little bit, but he's too fast for you to fully knock him down. That's why I still had him as my wide receiver 3. I didn't have him at the 1 like he finished in a couple formats last year. So Patrick Mahomes is absolutely poised and ready to go again. I don't see any reason for him to not be the number 1 quarterback again. The negative that I wrote for Patrick Mahomes is it is statistically very unlikely for him to repeat the stat line that he had last year. 50 touchdowns has only been done 3 times. And I think 40 touchdowns has only been done like 14 or 15 times. So realistically, he's probably going to drop all the way down into the 30s, like the rest of the league, and come down to earth. He may not. If he ends up dropping another 50 bomb or somewhere in the mid to high 40s, this is an anomaly of a player. It's not historically typical, and you've got something over the top special. He's already special, but this is another level special if he comes out and duplicates what he did last year. That being said, I do think he's still poised to be the number 1 quarterback. I just don't think you'll see quite what you saw last year, which is why I personally don't get Patrick Mahomes in any of my drafts, in any of my leagues, because his ADP is based on what he did last year, and I just think it's too much of a reach for the value you can get at some of these other guys, even a few rounds later or way later in the draft, and be able to kind of fill your roster in other more needed areas. Whereas the quarterback side, you can take a little bit more of a hit and not have to worry so much about making sure you get the top guy. Somebody's going to jump on him. Somebody's going to take that leap and draft him way earlier than he should. That is fine. To me, that is just as good as me getting him when I want to. And I personally, the round for me, when I just say, man, I can't pass that up for Patrick Mahomes, is round 5. A lot of people, it's round 4 because he goes in round 2 and 3. Round 5 for me, just because there's so much value in the first 4 rounds, 5, 6, 7, 8 rounds. There's so much value. it's hard to take a quarterback, but Patrick Mahomes is too good for me to pass up in the 5th round. It'd be very, very difficult, and I would consider it strongly if I was at the turn at the end of the 4th or close to the turn at the end of the 4th to pass it up, but most likely I would. It just really depends on my league and who I'm playing with. If I feel that he's a sure thing to go between then and a couple more picks later, I might as well take that shot. But other than that, I'm not going to be that guy that drafts him in the 2nd or 3rd round. So take that as you will. Patrick Mahomes is still probably going to be your number 1 quarterback. Number 2, some people agree with this. Some people are completely off of this and going to think I'm nuts. But my number 2 quarterback is Aaron Rodgers. So it's not that nuts considering the ADP has him number 3, but most people do not have him at their number 2. So my positive and negatives for Aaron Rodgers is he is 2 years removed from that major injury. And he played last season banged up, so yes, I hear that argument too that he was technically only 1 year removed from injury, but that major injury was 2 years ago. And then on top of that, another bonus is he's got great weapons around him again. All you hear all offseason long in the camps and stuff is about how good Geronimo Allison and Marquez Valdez-Scantling is looking. And people forget you do still have Jimmy Graham there. That being said, he's not that great of a fantasy option. Who knows? I thought it was going to be a match made in heaven with Aaron Rodgers, and it just wasn't. But he's still a very good pass and run blocker, and so that's something to keep in mind. And he's just a really big target for Aaron Rodgers to dump to if he needs to. And then Aaron Jones hopefully finally gets that role on this team and will elevate the passing game as well. I honestly think Aaron Rodgers is poised to have a monster year. He's going to be back to the Aaron Rodgers of old that we're used to, and I'm going to stick by that. He is my number 2 quarterback this year. My round that I'm looking for him in is the 6th. That is the round that I can't pass him up on. Once it gets to that pick, I technically can, depending on who's went off the board, because of the next couple of guys, if they're there in the following round, in the 7th. But in the 6th, I'm probably taking Aaron Rodgers. There's only a few quarterbacks I'll reach on, and that's really not a reach with him. And so I would definitely take Aaron Rodgers in the 6th. But other than that, I'm not looking at anyone else until then. Now, the downside to Aaron Rodgers is he let everybody down last year. Even coming off that injury, the hype for him was still very high. Everyone was still drafting him extremely high. We even had a guy in our home league draft him 2nd overall. That being said, he was new to fantasy, so that kind of justifies that. But that being said, he was going very, very high on boards. Everybody was still drafting him like he was the Aaron Rodgers of old, and everyone thought he was going to be, and he just wasn't. Last year was not his year, and I think that's why so many people are down on him this year. And in a lot of ADPs, he's even 4th and 5th. But I think people are forgetting who this is, and I think he's going to come back and show everybody and be the number 2 quarterback this year, in my opinion, with a chance of being number 1. Like I said, everybody at this top tier all have a chance of being that number 1 guy, but I think Patrick Mahomes still got the lock on that just because his team is too talented. But Aaron Rodgers is right there behind him, in my opinion. He is my number 2 quarterback. Number 3, the one that is about to set a lot of your ears on fire. I have my number 3 quarterback as Baker Mayfield. So a lot of you are thinking, man, you have absolutely been drinking that hype juice, jumping on ship like everybody else, but you have gotten drunk on it, and you are ranking him way too early. And I get it. I understand. This is not a popular vote. He's normally 4th at the best, and I'm seeing him at 7th and 8th, even 9th, and some people don't like him at all. So I'm going to go ahead and give you my reasons as to why I like Baker Mayfield and why I have him 3rd. So first of all, he set the rookie touchdown record at 27 touchdowns in only 13 games and had 3,700 yards on top of that. Now, I know a lot of you are saying, but wait, he played 14 games. That first one, he didn't even start. He came in when Tyrod Taylor got hurt, and he didn't even throw a touchdown in that game. So it didn't really even benefit him towards that record to even play in that game. So he threw in 13 games 27 touchdowns last year to set the rookie record. And on top of that, counting that game he didn't start, he did throw for over 3,700 yards. He absolutely killed it last year as a rookie with that coaching circus going on. All of you that watched, I believe it was Hard Knocks last year, it was just a nightmare. I mean, he's literally competing for the backup job. Like, let's get real. You took him at the 101. He had to deal with this all the time with that terrible excuse of a coach. The constantly arguing with his offensive coordinator until ultimately they both got fired. The current head coach took over, and Baker Mayfield killed it. He was absolutely fantastic. And one thing a lot of people are either counting towards it, and that's why they have him as high as they do, or they're ignoring it. Either way, it needs to be said. He's got Odell Beckham Jr. now. On top of having Jarvis Landry, David Njoku's another year in. I think he's a very talented tight end. I don't know how talented he'll be for fantasy, but I think for his team, it's huge. He's got Nick Chubb there to solidify the running game, and once he's off suspension, he's got one of the best weapons in football, whether you like him or not. Kareem Hunt is very, very useful to a quarterback, being A, that the defenses never know if you're going to run it or pass it with him, and B, he can catch the passes all over the place, and so that is huge for a quarterback. I think this is a team that is poised to have a very explosive offense, and I think Baker Mayfield is going to absolutely go nuts this year. And I don't know what that may result in, but he is in the running this year, in my opinion, for the MVP. So let's see how the year plays out. I have him as my number 3 quarterback. I'm sticking by that, and that is something a lot of people are going to criticize or they're going to love. Or I don't know how people are going to perceive that, but I have him there, and I'm sticking to it. Now, the negative that I have on it is we only have 1 year to go off of, so I completely understand the argument saying you need to relax. It was one good year. We've not even seen how he plays with Odell yet. Let's let this guy's career start rolling before we absolutely start blowing the hatch off and amp him all the way up this high. So I understand that side of the argument. I'm not buying it. I think I saw enough last year to know this guy is super talented. He's one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the NFL, and I think he's poised to be insane this year. So I have Baker Mayfield as my number 3 quarterback. My number 4 quarterback, the one you guys thought I was about to say. Maybe. Some of you may have had my number 5 there. But my number 4 quarterback is Deshaun Watson. So the positives for Deshaun Watson, I mean, they're endless. So I went ahead and pulled a couple. And right off the bat is this high explosive ability when it comes to putting up numbers. I mean, when you have, in my opinion, the best wide receiver in the game, and you can literally throw it wherever and the guy's going to come down with it, that's a pretty nice weapon to have. And then on top of that, Kiki Cutie and Will Fuller are both very good assets to have, and guys that usually when they're playing seem to both be fantasy relevant. So if they can stay healthy, I don't even want to know what Deshaun Watson's numbers could look like, because these numbers that he's been putting up is with these guys in and out week after week. You never know when they're going to play. So if he can get a full season out of all 3 of those wide receivers, one can only guess at what his numbers will end up being, because he is going to be fantastic. The other side is he is a true dual threat. He is going to be running the ball. He's going to have plays designed for him to run, and he's going to have something that you guys are going to hear come up quite a bit in this podcast episode at what I call the double end zone opportunity, and that's because when you get to the end zone, he's going to either throw a touchdown or he's got a lot of scripted plays to run a touchdown. Or even if it's not scripted, he may tuck it and run it in anyway. And so that's double the chance at the touchdown. And depending on your league, if it's 4-point passing touchdowns, it's 6-point rushing touchdowns, so it's even better. But the whole point in that double opportunity is because if he passes it, he still gets a touchdown for that. And if he runs it, he also gets a touchdown for that. So the chances of him getting a high amount of touchdowns are there. They may not all be passing, but you can't count out the rushing touchdown. And that's going to be super valuable in some leagues that don't have the 6-point passing touchdowns as well. And so I think Deshaun Watson's one of your safest picks this year if he can stay healthy. I don't see any reason he can't, other than he does have a slightly higher risk because he does run, and any running quarterback has a higher risk of injury. That being said, I'm not going to sit and count on the fact that he's going to get hurt. I'm just going to rely on the fact that I'm hoping his wide receivers don't get hurt. And if they don't, look out for Deshaun Watson. He is going to be insane as well. But because of the wishy-washy wide receiving core, I do think that's what knocks him down to 4 for me. Has nothing to do with him or his ability. And if those guys can stay consistent, not counting DeAndre Hopkins, everybody knows what you're going to get out of him. I'm talking about the rest of them. Then I think you're looking at another great year for Deshaun Watson. Very well, just like the rest of them, could end up the number 1 guy. I have him personally at my number 4. So my number 5, the one you guys have probably been waiting on, is Andrew Luck. So I have him falling down a little bit in my personal rankings because of that calf issue he's got going on. It's We'll get into that in the negatives, so let's go ahead and talk about his positives first. So right off the bat, last year he was number 2 in passing touchdowns behind Patrick Mahomes. No easy feat, he absolutely killed it, and he very well could end up leading the league in passing touchdowns this year, especially with the offensive improvements. Which leads me to my next bonus, my next positive for Andrew Luck, is the offensive improvements. With all the targets he's got there now, he had T.Y. Hilton, but now he's got Paris Campbell, somebody I'm very high on as long as the hamstring and all that's okay. But he's been in and out of practice. Well, he's not been practicing at all, so I'm hoping he comes back soon. And then you also have Devin Funchess there now as well. Although he drops a lot, he's going to hopefully draw some attention, open up some other guys, and hopefully catch the passes Andrew Luck throws to him. Jack Doyle should be back. You still got Eric Ebron. You've got Nyheim Hines out there. Marlon Mack's back to help with the defense because now you can have them respect the run a little bit more as opposed to just play the pass because of how good Andrew Luck is. This is a team a lot of people have as either their Super Bowl picks or one of the ones in the race for the Super Bowl, which is absolutely realistic for their possibilities this year. So why wouldn't you want one of the Super Bowl favorites quarterback on your team? ADPs have him number 2. I personally do not. Let's go ahead and get into his downside. And the only downside really that has him down a little bit further on my list than most people is that calf injury. It's one of the easiest injuries to re-aggravate, as we've already seen in this offseason. Everybody thought this was going to be over with by now, and it's still lingering. And so he's hoping, and the goal is to be ready by week 1, and everything's looking like he'll be ready for week 1. I don't want to hear that. I want to hear I'm going to be ready for week 1. I want to hear that I'm fine, we're resting it, I'm nursing it, and it will be good to go week 1. If I'm drafting a quarterback as high as these people are drafting Andrew Luck, I need that comfortability, I need that confirmation to know that he's going to be okay. And without that, I just can't do it. I can't pull that trigger. I think he's still going to be, as you can see, my number 5 quarterback, even if he misses a game or two here and there. But I cannot put him all the way up top. Now, with that all being said, if you scratch that injury out completely and he plays the entire season healthy, he absolutely could even beat Patrick Mahomes as the number 1 quarterback this year, just because now he's got some pretty good weapons around him too, and it'd be fun to watch. I definitely think he could be right there just because, again, I don't see Patrick Mahomes repeating what he did last year. This could be Andrew Luck's year to do that. You never know. There's always somebody different every year. That's why QBs, you can never super rely on what they did the year before. Patrick Mahomes is the closest thing to a sure thing, and that's why everybody's drafting him at the 1 spot, and I can't blame you there. But Andrew Luck, if he's fully healthy, absolutely could be there. But the calf's got me worried, and that's why I have him down at the 5th spot. Number 6. Go ahead and hold on to your chairs for this one. You're about to fall out of them. My number 6 quarterback is Cam Newton. For those of you that didn't just exit out of this video, let me go ahead and explain why I have Cam Newton as my number 6 quarterback. First of all, a lot of you feel really burned with Cam Newton last year, and I don't even really understand why. I don't remember him being somebody that was really hyped and everybody was drafting him insanely high. That being said, he was one of the higher quarterbacks drafted, as he is every year, except this year. And so let me go ahead and break it down for you. When Cam Newton is healthy and plays all year, he has never not been a top quarterback. He has never not been at this spot or better when he's healthy. He is, just like Deshaun Watson, a true dual threat quarterback. And so you always have that rushing bonus. He always breaks out every single game for 10 yards here, 15 yards there. Those are always significantly more productive than passing yards when you can get those in most formats. And on top of that, he has that same double end zone opportunity that I spoke about with Deshaun Watson that you're going to hear a couple more times in this, to where every time you get to the end zone, you have no idea if he's going to pass for a touchdown or if he's going to tuck it and run it in himself. Now, on top of that, I think he may have the best receiving corps that he's had since he's been in the NFL, arguably. With DJ Moore up and coming and Curtis Samuel, both guys that I think are going to have very good years this year, and I think you can't go wrong with drafting either of them. And then you also have, if he can stay healthy, Greg Olsen is back, his favorite target. Everybody knows that. And then you also have Christian McCaffrey there too, who is no joke in the passing game and is absolutely the greatest thing a quarterback can ever ask for when it comes to a check down, especially for the yards after catch, because Christian McCaffrey is going to keep going and end up with a few breakaway touchdowns this year that Cam Newton threw it 2 yards but just got 80 and a touchdown for it. Cam Newton, I don't understand why he's fallen so far. I guess everybody is terrified of his shoulder. So let's go ahead and get into that. Let's get into the negatives of Cam Newton. So he's coming off a shoulder surgery and a shoulder injury that kept him out towards the second half of last year. By the way, before that injury, he was one of the top quarterbacks, for those of you that are still needing convinced that he's capable of it. And just to comfort you guys with that injury, it is nowhere near the same situation that a lot of you have been comparing to the Andrew Luck injury a few years ago, that you came back and then got hurt again and you just weren't sure about it, and then ultimately he came back and was fine, but a lot of you think the process is going to take a lot longer. This is not even the same type of injury. It's a completely different one. It affects a different part of the throwing motion. It doesn't work against itself when he gets back out there and tries to work again. And he's already throwing in practice, and things are looking like by the time the season starts, he's going to be ready to go, and he's going to be just fine. And that's why Cam Newton's my number 6. And on top of that, his value at the number 6 quarterback for me is even better because, as you guys can see in ADPs, he's like the QB 11. You can take him in the 10th or 11th round in some leagues. I like to take him in the 9th just to be safe. But that being said, I probably could wait and get him in the 10th just fine. Depends on who you're playing with and how much they like him. Cam Newton is absolutely being slept on this year, and I have no idea why. I get the injury concern, but at that late, you can't pass on that. That is insane, especially considering if it does pan out for you, you are golden because you took him in the 9th or 10th round and got somebody that has a top 6, potentially top 3 production at the quarterback position, and you spent nothing on it, as opposed to the guy that drafted Patrick Mahomes in the 2nd or 3rd round while you were drafting your stud running backs that you have that you're going to beat him with, and with Cam Newton. I am full on Cam Newton's team this year. He is one of those guys that I don't know if I'm on a sea of my own with this. A lot of guys are not quite as down on him as most people are, but they aren't quite as high on him as I am, having him at my 6th quarterback. Time will tell, but this is somebody I'm pulling the trigger on this year, absolutely, and I think you guys should too. Number 7 on this list, another one that I moved up a little bit on the list, and I'm comfortable with it, though, where I've got it. Number 7 is Carson Wentz, but tread lightly with this pick, and I'm going to explain that in the negatives, but we're going to go ahead and go to the positives. So right off the bat, he has MVP caliber talent and potential. We saw that 2 years ago. He proved that to all of us. As much as I am not an Eagles fan, I think he deserved that MVP that year instead of Tom Brady. I mean, even though he didn't get to finish out the year, I still think he was the MVP that season, especially with how they usually go off of it. Had he literally played the last few games and done nothing in them, he probably still would have won the MVP. But because he got hurt, they basically wrote him off completely and didn't even put him in the running, it felt like, and Tom Brady ended up winning it. I definitely think Carson Wentz should have won the MVP that year. So right off the bat, that is what you can have. Secondly, this offense is absolutely stacked. Not just the offense, the whole team is. This is a great team, but again, like I said, a very great offense with a lot of great targets and a lot of great people around them that I've said a lot of great a bunch of times, because this team is really good and going to keep him in a good position at all times. Now, the downside to him, me personally, even though he doesn't rank that way if you go look at the injury calculator, he is the one I am most worried about getting re-injured out of this top 15 list of quarterbacks. He is the only one that I say if you draft him, make sure you go lock down one of these other top 15, maybe a few past that. Like I said, we'll get into that once we get to the end of some of the guys that I left out. He's just one that I think you're going to be the first person to draft a second quarterback if Carson Wentz is your first. But if he works out, and if he does anything even remotely resembling what he did 2 years ago, you struck gold, because he is also a decent ways down the list. He's number 8 on ADPs, but you're still getting him in the late 7th, early 8th round And that's a very, very good value as opposed to all these guys that went and drafted their guys in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th round. You can absolutely get away with Carson Wentz in the late 7th, early 8th, in some leagues even the 9th round. And then I think you just wait a few more rounds and lock down that second guy, or wait even later for one of those later guys that you have faith in. Like I said, he's just somebody I think you're going to be the first person, or at least you should be the first person, that drafts the second quarterback in your league, just in case he does go down. If he doesn't, you have very, very high potential for a high rate of success, and so that's why I have him as my number 7 quarterback. Number 8, another one that's jumping quite a bit on my board, Jared Goff. So right off the bat, with Jared Goff's positives, for those of you that need convinced, and it sounds like a lot of you do because of how far he's fallen, he has the best wide receiver core in the league. I don't personally think it's debatable, but some people like to argue other places, like maybe the Vikings. But where else do you find 3 startable wide receiver 1s and 2s on your team on the same team? That's got to have value being the quarterback of that. And that being said, last year he had 32 touchdowns and was barely over 300 yards away from 5,000 yards. And he didn't get any worse. I genuinely don't understand this one. I have no clue why he's falling. The only reason I have him this far down, and I guess this may be why everyone else has had him falling, but if so, you guys are very, very, very dramatically overreacting to this by letting him fall this far, and that's why he is one of the best steals in the draft at the quarterback position by far. So let's go ahead and get into his negatives. He can get a little careless with the football, and so he threw 12 interceptions last year. Granted, that is nowhere close to the worst. It is not that great either, and so I get the concerns on that side, but it's because of his play style, and without that play style, you don't get the 30 to 40 touchdowns in the 5,000 yards. The interceptions are just going to be there, so you take your good with the bad, and the good heavily outweighs the bad, and I do not understand why he's falling as far as he has. He's one of the best steals in the draft at his ADP. You can get him consistently in the 10th round, if not even later as of right now. Who knows? Maybe that changed. Maybe people wake up a little bit and start realizing, wait a second, this is Jared Goff. Like, he did great last year. Why is he being drafted as like the quarterback 13? Like, it's insane. I personally highly recommend him, especially as late as you can get him. You don't even have to reach for him, and you're going to be just fine with Jared Goff as your starting quarterback. That is why I have him at my number 8 spot. A little higher than a lot of people have him, but honestly, with how the season goes, he could finish a lot better than this. But I have him at number 8. Number 9. This one also throws a lot of people off, and this is why I said this is going to be a very interesting top 15 for a lot of you, because there are some guys that you're still waiting for me to say. And there are some that you think I'm absolutely insane. Those of you that actually stayed this far because of the Cam Newton at number 6. Well, here's another one. Number 9, I have Jameis Winston. Let me go ahead and give you a little bit of a background with Jameis Winston and me. Very short, very subtle. I am a Jameis Winston hater. I have always been. Nothing against him personally. It's just his performance and how he plays on the field. And this isn't a guy that burned me. I've never drafted him or had him on my team. I just have never liked his fantasy output, with very good reason. I am not a fan of 20 touchdowns and 15 interceptions. Now, I know that's reaching a little bit. He had more in his early years, but honestly, that's not that far from what he puts out. And the interceptions are too high versus the touchdowns. So I have always been a Jameis Winston hater. And so for me to have him at number 9, some of you that know me and have known me from fantasy football for years are going to be blown away by this, just because of how much I dislike drafting Jameis Winston. But let's go ahead and get into his positives and why I have him at the number 9 spot this year. Right off the bat, he has an immense amount of talent around him, especially with Chris Godwin and O.J. Howard emerging. Just to pair that up with Mike Evans, one of the best end-zone threats in the game, and Bruce Arians is there now to elevate the offense. I feel like everything is set in stone perfect around for him to have a very, very productive year. That being said, you get a little bit of a taste, not quite as productive, but a little bit of a taste of what I was talking about with Jared Goff, where the downside to him is he's highly productive, but he's going to throw those interceptions. And I don't know how much Bruce Arians is going to tolerate that and allow it. So he's going to tighten that up. Everything is already looking more consistent in the training camp, is what I'm hearing. I'm not super worried about it. Honestly, this is one of the first years I can genuinely say that I'm pretty excited to see what Jameis Winston has for us. And with that interception downside, that production upside with this opportunity is just too good to ignore. I personally think Jameis Winston might be a dark horse top 5 guy. I don't see that happening in almost any scenario. That's why I said dark horse, because it would have to come out of way left field for it to happen. But that is why I have him number 9, because he is going to put up numbers. And if he doesn't have the interceptions this year like he usually does, and he elevates his touchdowns even higher, he's going to be great. I mean, look at the hype around Chris Godwin, O.J. Howard, and Mike Evans. It's kind of the same argument with the Rams where everybody loves those receivers. How can you not like the quarterback? So if you love O.J. Howard, you love Chris Godwin, who's one of the most hyped players this offseason, and you love Mike Evans, how do you not like the guy throwing him the ball this year? And that being said, I get it. He has burned a lot of you. Not me, because I don't draft him. I've never been a fan of him. This year, I could easily see him, and I might just see him on a couple of my teams. That being said, we will see how it pans out, but I genuinely think Jameis Winston is poised to have a great year this year, and I think a lot of people are going to be really shocked by what he does. Number 10, depending on those of you that have been waiting on certain names, still not going to hear them. You'll hear them, but not hear yet. Number 10, Phillip Rivers. Right off the bat, highly talented wide receivers around Phillip Rivers. Keenan Allen is great. Mike is another one of those really, really hyped guys this year. And Hunter Henry is back, one of the most hyped. I don't really get that one. I think he's going to be great, but I don't think he's going to be better than O.J. Howard or Evan Ingram. I would have him behind them. That being said, nobody else thinks that. They think he's going to kill it. So if that's the case, you've got to be on the side of Phillip Rivers having a great year. And on top of that, with Melvin Gordon holding out, I think that only is going to elevate the pass game because they're not going to have a surefire running attack. That being said, Austin Eckler and Justin Jackson are no joke, and that threat is going to still be there. I still think with Melvin Gordon gone, this may end up helping Phillip Rivers a lot more than it hurts him, and he may have a ridiculous year this year. That being said, let's go ahead and get into his negatives real quick. I really only have one, and it's one I kind of had as a positive, is Melvin Gordon's gone. This could affect the offense as a whole and may end up hurting Phillip Rivers, but personally, I don't think it will. I think the biggest hit with Melvin Gordon being gone is going to be the win column, and they're going to play a lot of close games. They're going to play a lot of shootouts, and I think that's going to have Phillip Rivers having to go out there and air it out, and he's Phillip Rivers, and he can absolutely do it. And hopefully Melvin Gordon comes back, and this is a playoff team because I think they have a very good shot at the Super Bowl. That being said, if Melvin Gordon gone, I think it hits the win column more than it does his fantasy production. I think it actually may end up helping it. I have Phillip Rivers as my number 10 this year, and I'm fully comfortable with that. Number 11. This one is going to rub a lot of you the wrong way, and you're not going to like it. But I just, quite honestly, you can't argue against it when you look at the numbers, but everybody seems to love to. My number 11 quarterback is Dak Prescott. Right off the bat, for those of you saying, number 11, are you kidding me? I don't even have him in my top 15. He's going to be lucky to be a top 20. Let me go ahead and tell you, in the 3 years he's been in the league, what quarterback he's placed at. His first year, quarterback 6. And a lot of you are saying, well, yeah, his first year was insane. Everybody knows that, but he fell off after that. Fell off all the way down to where we have him right now, the quarterback 11 in his second year. Last year, quarterback 10. Those of you that remember how bad the season started last year for Dak when Amari showed up, things elevated through the roof. Now, to help Dak's argument with this, because a lot of people like to use that to kind of tear him down and say, well, yeah, he only elevated because he's got Amari Cooper. I can argue that he elevated Amari Cooper as well. I think they kind of helped each other. I think it's a ridiculous thing to say that somebody's only good because they have that good of a wide receiver. I mean, look at DeAndre Hopkins. He was always great because he's DeAndre Hopkins. Did any of us consider those quarterbacks throwing him the ball great? No. And that's why I don't think if a wide receiver is good as DeAndre Hopkins, is he going to elevate somebody all the way up into being considered a top guy? I don't see why somebody can sit and say Amari Cooper is going to elevate Dak Prescott, and that's the only reason he's talented. He was great in year one. We all seen it. He does nothing but win. That's what he's out there for. He's just not done it in the postseason yet, and that's why everybody bashes him for it. We aren't discussing the postseason. We're discussing fantasy football relevance, and he is absolutely going to be relevant this year. You take Amari Cooper even out of the picture. They now have Randall Cobb, who I think is a huge improvement on Cole Beasley. I won't say huge. Cole Beasley was very, very good for us, but he should not have been our number one wide receiver in any situation. And so, that being said, I think Randall Cobb is an improvement. And apparently out of camp, they are doing very well together. They also have Michael Gallup, the rookie from last year, that I am super excited for. I absolutely loved him last year, and I'm super excited to see what him and Amari end up turning into, especially with Randall Cobb there now as well. And then PPAP himself, Jason Witten, is back. The most reliable third down security blanket that you can ask for. Jason Witten has returned, which is only going to help not only everyone in that receiving group, but he's going to help Dak tremendously, not only with the mentorship, but being there when you need him. Having that guy to count on is very, very important. Dak Prescott has all of that. That double end zone opportunity that I was speaking about with Cam Newton and with Deshaun Watson, this is where it gets mentioned again. Dak Prescott also has that. Dak Prescott runs it in for touchdowns all of the time. So you also, like all quarterbacks in the end zone, have a very high opportunity of passing it for a touchdown. But when you can also tuck it and run, or they sometimes design a play for you to run it in, I mean, how many times have people completely sold on Ezekiel Elliott running it up the middle and he just holds it and runs right off wide open into to the left or right for a touchdown while the entire team is focused on Ezekiel Elliott? It also kind of hurts him because not quite the double end zone opportunity that the other two are, just because of Ezekiel Elliott and how good he is at the goal line, but he's still absolutely a double end zone threat and somebody that you cannot count out, and he's going to get those rushing touchdowns this year. He's actually a very underrated rushing quarterback. He's very good at it, and so that always helps you on fantasy football. So ultimately, I think people are, as usual, sleeping on Dak Prescott. They always do. He never gets the recognition he deserves. I still don't get it. Maybe I have a little bias where I'm a Cowboys fan, but I can't tell you how many Cowboys fans I've talked to that don't like Dak Prescott. It makes no sense to me. All he's done is win games and be productive. He's not being asked to be Aaron Rodgers, and so I don't know why people keep expecting that. That's not his role. That being said, let's go ahead and get into his negatives. So the negative is the very, very, very obvious one, and that is Ezekiel Elliott. So things didn't look too great for Dak those 6 games that Elliott got suspended. His prove it games, as everybody has not been able to forget about and hold those over his head on a daily basis as to why he's not quite reached the status of even good in their eyes. And so with the potential holdout looming with Ezekiel Elliott, we have no idea what to expect from Dak. That being said, the reason I'm not super worried about it, I mean, obviously to an extent, but he didn't have this wide receiver core then. And I think that's going to be a huge difference. I really do. With Amari Cooper, Randall Cobb, Jason Witten, Michael Gallup, Tavon Austin, the list keeps going. You also have Tony Pollard. If Ezekiel Elliott doesn't show up at first, that can get out in the passing game from what I'm understanding with him as well. I just personally think he's going to be okay. I don't know how okay the Cowboys will be. I think we absolutely need Ezekiel Elliott to do anything relevant. But Dak Prescott's still going to be a productive quarterback, and I absolutely am fully confident and comfortable having him as my number 11 QB this year. Could even finish higher. I would have liked to put him higher on the list, but being a Cowboys fan, I didn't want it to look like I was having a bias. And quite honestly, I'm okay with him here. I think all 10 of the guys I said in front of him have a very good chance of finishing that way. So we have him at 11. He's going to stay there for now, going into the season. But keep an eye on him. He very well could move up. Number 12. This might be one of the guys you guys have been waiting for me to say. And he's somebody that has moved way up boards, and I don't understand it at all. And those for you waiting on the other guy, it's not him either yet. But number 12 is Matt Ryan. So right off the bat, he is going extremely high in drafts, and I don't know why. I think we all know what you get from Matt Ryan. Yes, he finished the number 2 last year, but as history will tell us, it's probably not going to happen this year, especially Matt Ryan's history. It's just what he does. He does good, and then he does bad, then he does good, then he does bad. He did good last year. Who knows? Maybe this is the year he breaks that cycle. I think it's the year he breaks the cycle a little bit. I think he's a number 12 guy, which would still be a QB1, but I definitely don't have him as high as everybody else does. That being said, let's go ahead and get into his positives. This is a high-powered offense, as always. They always are every single year, and that's why Matt Ryan always stays at least fantasy relevant. And Julio Jones didn't go anywhere, at least as of right now. He's not been signed to a contract yet, but from my understanding, all that's going to be taken care of very soon. They keep saying they're willing to make him the highest-paid wide receiver, but yet a contract doesn't get done. I don't know why, so who knows? Something to keep an eye on. I'm not worried about that in any way, shape, or form. And then when you also add in Calvin Ridley or Mohamed Sanu, this ends up being one of the best wide receiving cores in the league. I think possibly the second. You could argue the third because of the Vikings. I definitely don't think they're better than the Rams, but this is one of the best wide receiver cores in the league. Austin Hooper's starting to turn into something too, so we'll have to keep an eye on that as well. So Matt Ryan absolutely has the tools around him and the opportunity, and so let's see what he does with it, but let's go ahead and get into his negatives. Right off the bat with the negatives, my biggest thing is you don't know whether you're going to get Matty Ice going out there killing it, or you're going to get an icy Matt. And the reason I say that is because when you think he's going to kill it, he sometimes has a tendency of letting you down and end up not doing that great. And then when you forget about him and you say, all right, it's all good, I'm going to take somebody else, he's going to come out and absolutely destroy. And so it's very, very, very hard to keep up with the Matt Ryan train. If you just follow the pattern, he shouldn't be good this year. That being said, because of how fantasy football works, is he did great last year, so people are going to think he's going to do good this year. And he very well could. I would like to see him break that cycle and do great this year. Finished the number 2 last year. He absolutely can do it. The opportunities are there. I think he's got an opportunity to be one of those quote-unquote sneaky good quarterbacks, but it's not that sneaky if he ends up doing good because people are drafting him really high. But if you're in a league, a home league that just like me and doesn't really think that highly of him and don't expect him to do that again, then you might be able to take him a little bit later. And if you can, he might end up qualifying as one of those sneaky good guys that finishes really, really well. I don't see it. I see him being great. I just don't see him being last year's great. I don't see Matty Ice, but I don't necessarily see Icy Matt either. I think we see just good old Matt Ryan going to come out, do good, but he's not going to be anything over the top. But you're not going to be disappointed with him unless you drafted him as early as everybody else is. So I guess technically you would be disappointed if he ended up doing what I think he will. But if you're able to wait and get him later on, he's not going to be a bad pick. And you have that shot that he ends up being great. And if he falls as far as he technically is going in drafts, then yeah, it would be a steal if he ended up being the number 2 guy again. But I don't see it. I think he's going to end up being right here where I have him at the 12th spot, tail end of the QB1s. But like I said, once you get to this point, you're splitting hairs. Any one of these guys can jump forward, move back. And so we'll just have to see how the season goes. So I have Matt Ryan as the number 12. Number 13, Drew Brees. Man, does this division know how to put out fantasy production. I have all 4 quarterbacks in my top 15 from this division. We have Cam Newton at number 6, Jameis Winston at number 9, just had Matt Ryan at number 12, and now Drew Brees at number 13. The positives for Drew Brees, I mean, it's Drew Brees. He's Drew Brees, and he's going to go out and do Drew Brees things. That's just the nature of it. So there's really not a whole lot to discuss there. The downside to him, the only reason I have him where I have him, this is a very, very good running football team, and they're going to continue to do that. And so that ultimately hits the passing game. And this is a Super Bowl bound team, and the last thing they are concerned with is making sure Drew Brees gets out there and puts up a ridiculous fantasy season for all of us. I think he's going to go out and do what it takes to win, which is going to include a lot of running. Not him particularly, but handing the ball off. And I could see Alvin Kamara amplifying him some. That's what keeps him here and possibly even higher. Michael Thomas is great. Past Michael Thomas, I'm not looking anywhere at these wide receivers. Maybe Jared Cook in the conversation if you can get him a little bit late. So I hear that argument too. It's Drew Brees. I mean, if you have one of his main guys he's throwing to, you're going to be just fine. I just think this team runs the ball too much for him to be any higher than this. Everybody thought he was going to end up being like the number 2 guy. I had him last year, and he was absolutely phenomenal. Did not disappoint. Till towards the end of the year, it kind of trickled down quite a bit. There's one week that I lost because I think he only got me like 4 points. This is coming off like a 20 to 30 point game that he had the week before. And so he's going to hit you with those every now and then, and I'm pretty sure they won that game. They just ran the ball so much that they didn't need him to have a ridiculous passing game. They do whatever they can to get there, and then they will take care of the rest once it gets to playoff time. And this team is coming out with a vengeance, don't get me wrong, but I think where their strength is Saying this is nuts having Drew Brees as your quarterback, but their strength is running. This is a very, very good running team, and that's why I have Drew Brees down at 13. I feel like this is a guy I kind of have to give my reasonings against as opposed to for because it's Drew Brees. I mean, like I said, the positive is it's Drew Brees. I don't know how many more times I can say that, but the negative is just the opportunity isn't quite there because of how good they run the ball. He's still going to be a very fantasy relevant guy. I wouldn't take him where he's going right now. The guys that are going after him, I prefer, and so he probably won't be on any of my teams. But that being said, you never know. He could be just as great as he was at the beginning of last year, all year, and then you struck gold. So we'll see. I have him at the number 13 spot. So number 14 is Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson is a dual threat when he has to be. He can absolutely get out of that pocket, run off, and if he sees an opportunity, he can tuck it and go for 15 all the way to 30 yards, 40 sometimes. He surprises you out of nowhere at these massive runs. And on top of that, he's one of the best on-the-run passers that you have. So the defenses can't pull off of the target and try to get him because then he'll just throw it right over their head to him. So his dual threat is dual threat to its core, and he is very, very efficient with that. And he is always touchdown reliable. He's always going to be out there throwing touchdown after touchdown after touchdown. I feel like he always finds a way year after year to do it by himself, even though obviously he's not by himself. Man, I swear this is one of the most leaned on quarterbacks in the league every single year. The wide receiving core is not a good one. Tyler Lockett is probably going to be pretty good this year. That being said, he's still getting drafted with a lot of people's wide receiver 2s and even 3s, and he's a wide receiver 1 for his team. A lot of people are hyped about DK Metcalf, so you have that as well to look forward to, and a couple other guys out there. But ultimately, this is a running team. 1,000%. This is a running team. They actually led the league in rushing last year, and that ultimately is why I have Russell Wilson down as low as he is. He's not going to have the opportunity because of how much this team runs the ball, and on top of that, he doesn't have the guys to throw it to anymore like he used to with the Jimmy Graham years and Doug Baldwin and Kearse and just all these guys across the board that were always relevant. Is just gone now, and this team is solely focused on the run. And I absolutely think a few guys can emerge relevant on this team, wide receiver-wise. A lot of people are excited about Disley even, but this is, at its core, a running team, and I don't see that changing at all this year. So that's why I have Russell Wilson at number 14. Sorry I couldn't have Meyer because he is an absolutely astronomical talent. We've seen that he just got the highest contract in NFL history. That being said, I can't move him up any more than this, and I tried. I fought with these rankings so much. And I had to include him because he's Russell Wilson, but it's just I can't move him up any higher than this because of that opportunity there, even more so than the Saints. With them being a good running team, this team is an absolutely full-on running team, and I think that hits him more than it does any other quarterback. And so that's why he falls down as low as he is with as talented as he is, on top of the wide receiving core that he has now, which I think is going to ultimately be okay. But as of right now, I don't see them being anything over the top, and this is going to be a running team, and so I have Russell Wilson at number 14. Number 15, the one a lot of you have been absolutely waiting and waiting and waiting for me to say, so let's go ahead and announce it. Kyler Murray. Now I'm going to go ahead before I get into his positive and negatives and tell you it was extremely difficult for me to put him over people like Ben Roethlisberger, Kirk Cousins even, or even Lamar Jackson, who plays just like him, and apparently in camp rumors has significantly improved his passing game too. And if that's the case, you've got a very good argument for him to be exactly what people think Kyler's going to be, except 1 year into the league. And granted, they both have the teams built around them right now, especially in Kingsbury being now with an offense that's practically made for Kyler Murray. So I hear the arguments there, but it's very, very difficult for me to put him here. That being said, I get the historical consistency of a rookie quarterback coming in, rushing, and absolutely killing it year in, year out, and so I can't count him out. I'm not going to have him as high as everybody else has him, but I do have him in my top 15. So let's go ahead and get into the positives and negatives for Kyler Murray. Right off the bat, this is dual threat at its highest, at its most extreme. Somebody that can get out there and absolutely run and torch the field just as good as any running back. We've seen it with Lamar Jackson last year, and where he has an edge to Lamar Jackson is his passing ability. This guy's got an absolute cannon. He's very, very, very talented passer, and I think that's why a lot of people have him as high as he is going in drafts. And because of how good he is at passing the ball and running the ball, I could absolutely see him finishing as high as most of you have him at like the 7th, 8th spot, even higher than that. But let's go ahead and get into his negatives and the reason I have him at the 15 spot. So with this new air raid college offense that Cliff Kingsbury is bringing to the NFL, no one knows what to expect. Now, don't get me wrong. It is a great story, a great assumption that it's going to catch everyone off guard. It's going to come in and be extremely successful in the NFL like a lot of new things are the first year. Then people catch on to it, and then it gets shut down. But if this doesn't work out, there's a very good chance that Kyler Murray struggles to even be in the top 20 and even be remotely relevant in fantasy. Now, like I said, history shows that running rookie quarterbacks usually are very successful, and that's why I still included him in my top 15. But I had to put him at 15 right here on the line because if, like I said, that offense doesn't pan out, he is not going to be fantasy relevant, hardly at all. But, like I said, if this offense does end up paying off and it is successful, watch out for Kyler Murray because he is absolutely going to be way better than the 15th spot. But with how risky this is and us not seeing anything, I can't see myself taking him any earlier than this. Every single one of the guys I just named, besides maybe Russell Wilson, just because I like the upside that Kyler has, I probably would draft over him. And especially with his ADP and how high he's moved up on boards. As we've seen earlier, I think he's like the QB 7 now or 9, something like that on ADPs. And people are even reaching further than that because they really want this guy on their team. And I get it. If he pays out, it's going to be great. But for me personally, I probably won't have him on any of my teams because I'm not reaching that far for him, especially when I literally have like 6 or 7 guys after him in the ADPs that I like better than him. I'm probably not going to have him on any of my teams. That being said, if this offense comes out, takes over, and does great, you've gotten a steal here even at the 8th spot, so something to keep an eye on there. But I have him at my 15th spot, and that's where he's going to stay going into the year. If he ends up being great, great. If he ends up falling off, then I really didn't reach that much on my rankings on him. I put him at the tail end of this, so we're just going to have to see how this works out for him. But that being said, he is number 15, and that is our top 15 quarterbacks for the 2019 fantasy football season. So let's go ahead and break down from start to top what we had. Number 1, Patrick Mahomes. Number 2, Aaron Rodgers. Number 3, Baker Mayfield. Number 4, Deshaun Watson. Number 5, Andrew Luck. Number 6, Cam Newton. Number 7, Carson Wentz. Number 8, Jared Goff. Number 9, Jameis Winston. Number 10, Phillip Rivers. Number 11, Dak Prescott. Number 12, Matt Ryan. Number 13, Drew Brees. Number 14, Russell Wilson. And number 15, Kyler Murray. So that has been my top 15 fantasy football quarterbacks for the 2019 season. Make sure you leave comments below with your feedback and comments and absolutely rip into me for some of these if that's how you feel, or compliment them, or just any feedback at all is always appreciated. I love to hear it. I always get excited seeing it. It's very fun to interact with, and so make sure you leave your feedback below as to what you think and what you would change in my top 15 quarterback list. Moving on, that top 15 translates very well straight over into our Q&A segment of the video. So basically, like I said in the previous episodes, our Q&A portion, our questions are submitted in the comment section, or like I said, in these a couple situations, guys send them in leagues when I tell them, hey, do you have any Q&A questions for the podcast? But most cases, if I don't get any submissions, I then go over to the sleeper forums where I find questions that I like and I use them. I keep their names anonymous though because they did not submit them. Nonetheless, let's go ahead and get into it. Our first question comes from Sin City Fantasy. Again, like I said in episode 2, make sure you guys go check him out. His link is going to be at the top of the description below. He is very generous and courteous enough to invite me over to hang out for a draft that he held in a live stream, and it was very fun. I met a lot of great people, so much that we ended up starting a Dynasty League now and met even more great people in that. And so it's been a blast, and I just want to say thank you again for involving me in that, and make sure you guys go check him out. He does fantasy football streams where he does a lot of mock drafts, and his info, if you're curious as to how reliable it is, me and him think very alike. When we do mock drafts, we sit and take each other's picks the entire time. And so, of course, we disagree on some things, and of course, we agree on others. Make sure you guys go check him out, and make sure you drop a subscribe. Tell him I sent you if you don't already know him. But that being said, let's go ahead and get into his question. So why I said this translated very well from our top 15, who we had at 15th. He asked, is Kyler Murray the next Deshaun Watson or the next Deshaun Kaiser? So basically, if I had to answer this, I'm going to say neither. And the reason I say neither is because I don't think he's going to be as good as Deshaun Watson, but I definitely don't think he's going to be as bad as Kaiser. Now, if we had to lean one way or the other, I absolutely 1,000% lean the Deshaun Watson side of this. So if let's say we had a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being Deshaun Watson, 0 being Deshaun Kaiser, I know I said 1 to 10, but those are your sides, 5 being a dead split between the two of them, I probably have him at an 8. That's probably where I have him. Way over on the Deshaun Watson side. Not quite Deshaun Watson, but who knows? If this system works out there, great. And people just can't find a way to stop it. They usually always end up finding a way, though. But if they can't, he's got a shot of being even better. But that being said, talent-wise, I think Deshaun Watson's going to be better than him. But I definitely have him leaning that side if he's successful. If he's not successful, and obviously I know this is a question as to what I think, whether he will be or not, I think he will be. But the flip side of things, I still don't think are as bad as Deshaun Kaiser, as bad as that is to say. So let's go ahead and put, if we had to choose a downside, I'm going to have him at a 3. On that scale that we made, but I'm going to put him at an 8 on the Deshaun Watson scale, as I'm going to call it, because 10 being Deshaun Watson, we'll put him at an 8. Is where he could potentially end up. That's where I think he'll end up eventually. I don't know if that's this year. A lot of people think it is, so we'll see. But that is the answer to that one. Let's go ahead and move on to our question number 2. This one comes in from Fantasy Football Great FFGR8. He is also in my Dynasty League. This is where I got both of these questions at. He said, what QBs are you targeting in a 12-man redraft Superflex League, not counting the top 5 ADPs, which would be Mahomes, Luck, Rodgers, Watson, and Mayfield. So if I had to rule that out, these are the guys I would go for. So I already knew beforehand going into it. The bigger question is when you go for them. So I'm going to look over here at my computer, and I'm going to pull up this mock draft that I just did, and let's go off of that. So I am extremely happy settling with what I ended with here. This is not a Dynasty League. You didn't say Dynasty, you just said redraft. So clearly the age is not relevant, and so which one of these would have been fine even in a Dynasty. But I waited until the 5th round to take a quarterback, and you said you had the 12th pick, and there's a 12-man league, and so I took the 12th pick and just kind of seen what I had to work with and when I would need to take somebody. So at the turnaround, the 5-12 and the 6-1, I went ahead and took back-to-back quarterbacks here because by the time everything went through, the only quarterbacks left, I was still happy with this, is I got Phillip Rivers and Dak Prescott at that turnaround, and I think you're absolutely going to be happy with that. And my top 15 quarterbacks is number 10 and 11, and you waited all the way to here to get that. Just for an example of what your team could look like, I drafted at the 1-12 and the 2-1 Devontae Adams and Juju Smith-Schuster. Went the double wide receiver route, and then when it came back around at the 3-12 and the 4-1, I went Kerryon Johnson and Josh Jacobs. And so right off the bat, you have a very, very solid wide receiver set and running back set, and then you still landed Phillip Rivers and Dak Prescott. But let's say, no, I want to wait even longer. You were to pass up on those two, but I went ahead and took at the 7-12 and the 8-1 2 more quarterbacks, and I'm honestly not ecstatic about it, but I would still be okay. It depends on what you're able to get at that 5-12 and 6-1 by passing up. But I still got Josh Allen and Matthew Stafford. Those were the two that I thought were the best, but the other ones that were there were Kirk Cousins and Derek Carr. After that, what's left is Sam Darnold, Nick Foles, Andy Dalton. I think Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins is kind of that cutoff. So the 8th round is where you need to make sure you have your second quarterback locked down. I love Cam Newton this year, like I said, but he is going at the 4-7, and that means you would have had to draft him at the 4-1 instead of Josh Jacobs. And I personally am not a fan of getting rid of that for that, even though I love Cam Newton, like I said, having that talent at the other spots and then still being able to get a Phillip Rivers, Dak Prescott, or even waiting and taking Dak Prescott at the 6-1 and waiting all the way until it comes back to you for the 7-12 at Josh Allen or even Matthew Stafford, Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins. And if it doesn't go this way, Lamar Jackson went at the beginning of the 7th round, so if that slips and you get a Dak Prescott, Lamar Jackson stack later on, that's fine too. I'm perfectly okay with either. But the way I did this route, and you also in between Dak Prescott and the Josh Allen pick, you've seen Jimmy Garoppolo, Mitchell Trubisky, Lamar Jackson, and Tom Brady go. Those are the ones in between there. right before Phillip Rivers, some guys that may slip to you. You've seen Kyler Murray at the 5'7", Jameis Winston at the 5'9", Ben at the 5'10", and then Phillip Rivers at the 5'12". So it's going to really depend. I only did one just to see this. I think if you wait till the 5th and 6th and take back-to-back quarterbacks at that turn, obviously depending on who's in your league, but in this league I drafted 2 quarterbacks as the setting, and they were flying off the board like crazy, so I don't see, if anything, home leagues are going to be a little bit better quarterbacks sitting here for you. Phillip Rivers and Dak Prescott at the 5-12, 6-1 turn I think is fine, especially when you have Devontae Adams and Juju at wide receiver and Kerryon and Josh Jacobs at the running back. That is an absolute ridiculous stack at both of those. Obviously, you would like a better RB1 than Kerryon, but when you back it up with your RB2 being Josh Jacobs, both of which could finish in the top 10, but more likely you got 2 top 15 running backs, that's still probably just as good as anybody's, number 1 guy and then a number 15 guy. Well, obviously it's not as good, but it's still very solid, especially because you're going to have a way better wide receiver core than anybody else in the league. Having Devontae Adams and Juju, my number 2 and 4 guy, but I would draft Juju at the 3. Just to kind of give you a breakdown, I took them over James Conner, Joe Mixon, Dalvin Cook, Antonio Brown, OBJ, Damian Williams, Mike Evans, and so on. So, that was the turnaround. That was who I took there. So, I think you can wait to the 5 and 6. I probably wouldn't go the route, but if I had to, I'd take the 6th and then wait and take another one in the 7th or 8th because you have the turnaround. Either one's fine. So, to answer that question, those are who I would target late. I love having Cam, but it looks like he's just going too early, even in QB2 leagues. I just don't like reaching for a quarterback before the 4th round or before the 5th round. I think 5th, you take what you can get, and if you can get one of those guys and Dak Prescott, I think you're fine. So to answer that question, that is what I would do. So those are our 2 that were submitted that we give the username out. This third one we got from the Q&A section of the Sleeper app. I did leave a comment on the question letting them know that this would be featured in it. So if this is you, feel free to comment below and say, hey, that was me. I asked that question if you want to. I don't give the name out because it wasn't submitted. But our third question says, who do I keep? Full point PPR, Mike Evans, or Juju? Now, when I first read this, I wasn't even going to answer it because I don't think it's really a question. I'm high on Juju. Yes, I know. But I definitely don't think this is a very valid question. Not offense to you asking it, because the reason I ended up choosing it to answer is when I clicked on it and looked at some of the responses, they were very mixed. And there's actually quite a bit leaning Mike Evans, and I don't think that's the route to go here at all. You 1,000% go Juju Smith-Schuster here. 2 reasons. First and foremost, you said this is a full point PPR. Mike Evans is not known for his high catch rates. He is known for getting touchdowns. Juju Smith-Schuster is going to get more touchdowns this year, in my opinion, because Antonio Brown is gone. But he's also top 5 last year in targets and had an astronomical amount of receptions. And PPR, you just couldn't argue with his value. He was too good. And so in a full point PPR this year, I absolutely am taking Juju. So to clear up some confusion, because one guy said Mike Evans because what did he say exactly? He said Mike Evans because the number 1 receivers on that team are always good. I don't even understand that reference because the number 1 on that team every year is Mike Evans. So it's not the number 1 receivers, it's him. He's always the number 1 on that team. And so I absolutely, and the worst part about it, the guy had a Steelers image, Steelers logo on it, unless it was your friend in the same league as you trying to pull you off of Juju. I think you absolutely go Juju here. So hopefully that helped you out. And that's it for our Q&A portion of it. Like I said, for those of you that want to submit questions, make sure you leave them in the comment section below. That is the best place to leave them. But you can also send them to me on Twitter if you feel you'd rather do that. That's perfectly fine if you're wanting to keep it private for some reason. That is completely understandable. You can tweet me at DallasFFO. Tell me you want to DM me or something like that. We can work something out with that. For your question submissions, the easiest without having to get into all that is absolutely the comment section below, so make sure you guys do that. Alrighty, guys, that is it for our Episode 3 podcast. Let's go ahead and close this out with one more shout-out to Sin City Fantasy. Make sure you guys go check him out. His link is at the top of the description. Again, I want to thank him for inviting me out, letting me meet all these people. It's been a great experience, and they've helped me out and supported me a lot with what I'm doing over here, too. So please go do that. Please go support him as well. He's got some great content over there, and I don't think you guys will be disappointed. Again, if you don't know him already, make sure you tell him I sent you. But if you do know him, then you already know his content's good. So Guys, go check them out for sure. Link at the top of the description on that. One more time, I'm going to re-promote my positional mock draft streams. Make sure you guys look. I went and did my first one the other day. If you go to my channel and look, you can see it's the #1 draft slot overall. Basically, what I do in these is I do them live, and I do 3 mock drafts. Obviously, it'll break down to 2 once you get to the 10-man leagues and 12. But at the #1 spot, I drafted in an 8-team league, a 10-team league, and a 12-team league. And basically, what I would do in different situations by doing mock drafts at each position, and that's why I call them positional mock draft streams. Our next one will obviously be position #2, and I plan on getting all the way up to position 12. 11 and 12 will probably be in the same stream, considering it's only going to be 2 mock drafts, so it'll be a lot shorter, and so I think I can include both of those in the same stream. That being said, make sure you guys go check those out. Stay tuned for those. Make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell below, because that'll absolutely be the best way to see things as I upload them or when I go live, because it tells you right away. Again, this is typically the part of the podcast where I do my Thorn of the Week segment. Can't do that yet because the season hasn't started. Basically, what I was talking about earlier is with the Eagles is there's a very good chance that Jordan Howard ends up being your thorn in the foot of Miles Sanders all year. There's also a good chance it could be the other way around. Jordan Howard does great, Miles Sanders keeps sticking his neck out. Or it could be Darren Sproles. That whole team, it's just a thorn bush of a backfield. So that's why I don't like them at all. But basically the thorn is somebody that eats a lot of production from somebody that should be great if this other person wasn't there. That other person being their thorn in their foot. That segment will start once the season starts. We will have Thorn of the Week and ultimately Thorn of the Year at the end of the season. So keep an eye out for that once it gets there. My name is Dallas. You are watching the Fantasy Football Outpost. Thank you so much for supporting us. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. Drop a like because YouTube's algorithm loves those, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.